Welcome to Money Market, a Bank of Tampa podcast. We highlight the businesses, expert business advice, local economy, and points of interest in the Tampa Bay market. Follow us on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you find your finer podcast. And please share this episode with a friend or colleague. So if you're interested in Tampa Bay and business in Tampa Bay, this podcast is a podcast for you. I'm your host, Owen Lefebvre, the Pinellas County Market President with the Bank of Tampa, Tampa Bay's oldest and largest community bank. Today, we are joined by Bill Reeves with Colliers Tampa Bay. Is it Colliers Tampa Bay or Colliers International?
Colliers International.
Okay. So Tampa Bay was the old name? Or
Lee Arnold started the Florida offices, and I believe in 2017, he sold everything to corporate. So we were a franchise office for years, and then now we're...
And then it became the beast, the international beast that it is. So we're here to talk about the Tampa Bay office market.
Good.
Bill joined Colliers in 2015, where you specialize in commercial real estate leasing and sales negotiations, strategic planning and site selection, data technology centers, and disposition of surplus real estate. Graduated from the University of Florida, so you're a Gator. Yeah. Also an active member of the Florida Gulf Coast Community Association of Realtors. You sit on the board of directors for Leadership Tampa Bay. Graduate of Leadership Tampa, 2015. Yeah. Best class ever. That's where we met. So, and also a member of UF ReNet. Did that replace SOREP?
SOMNet might have replaced ReNet. It's been a while since I've been too active in that one.
We got to take that off your
You might
bio.
want to take that one off. I might need to take that one off.
All right, but you have
But
received,
go Gators.
There you go. Go Gators. Tough year for the Gators, but next year's another year. You got a lot of accolades, but most recently you were recognized as the Tampa Bay Business Journal's Dealmaker of the Year for 2023. So congrats, man.
Thank you. Thank
you.
you.
That's awesome. I want to talk about that in a little bit. But so we're here to talk about the office market and office apocalypse, but maybe not here in Tampa Bay. So to set the stage, do you consider yourself a tenant rep?
90% of my business is representing tenants, not landlords. So in any negotiation, there's two sides. There's two parties on either side of the table. I represent the tenant side of the table. I let the people in this market represent the landlords, and that's my specialty. And almost 100% office tenant rep.
Okay.
A lot of people represent industrial. You can represent retail. I almost strictly do office space.
Okay. Now, so do you do leasing and sales or primarily leasing?
Yeah, I'll do anything my clients need me to do. Put it that way. And my clients are all tenants. So,
got it.
On occasion, a tenant may, I'm thinking of an example, can't think of one, but a tenant might own a building, and then I would represent the building and help sell that building, but I don't court or chase or have clients that are strictly landlords.
Got it. Okay. For our listeners, can you please define what the classes of office space are? Because I find I feel like it's a little bit more art than science, because I get
100%.
packages all the time that are like, this is Class A space. And I'm like, it's 20-something years old, and you put some lipstick on it, but so how do you define, how does the industry define it?
It is very subjective, and a landlord might call his building A, and I might call it B+. But typically it's amenities.
And then they're insulted immediately.
Yeah, but they know what they got. They know what they have. Amenities are always important, but also location. I mean, this is a good example of a Class A building, but maybe doesn't have the amenities that something like a Water Street or a Midtown or even an urban center would have. But it's still Class A because it has water views. It's kind of it's a destination. Everybody in town knows it.
And for everyone's benefit, so we're sitting at the Bank of Tampa's Bayshore office. So South Tampa, just outside of downtown, but waterfront views. Essentially no amenities, but that doesn't really matter when you're talking about.
Yeah, that doesn't really matter. Yeah, parking is important. In Tampa, we don't have public transportation, and everybody drives a car. So parking, the ability to find parking nearby, it's all very subjective, but you know it when you walk in a building. You say, oh, this is a nice building. Okay, that's probably an A. If you walk in a building and say, this is a normal office building. You see them all over the place. It's probably a B. All right, a C building, you're making sure you locked your car before you walked in the building. And anything less than that, might need to be torn down and built
repurposed, right? Yeah, there you go. I'm sure we got some of that to talk about. Yeah, but working from home killed the office market.
It's so working from home was the phrase that everybody used in the start of the pandemic. Now, everybody's calling it flexible office space.
Okay.
Flexible occupancy. Kforce is a good client of mine. They're headquartered here in Tampa. They're a staffing firm with about 70 locations around the country.
Did you did the Midtown lease?
Correct.
Nice,
Correct.
man. That's another man. Dealmaker of the year.
Yeah. They have office space. They went from 130,000 square feet building in Ybor City down to 25,000 square feet.
Wow.
Their teams come in on an as-needed basis. There's not a specific. They don't have to be in 3 days a week or 2 days a week. There's nothing specific about it. But the teams have to meet on a regular basis, and regular can be every 2 weeks, can be every month. It's team dependent and team driven, but they have to have space to meet. So it's flexible. It's not 100% work from home. It's not 100% work in the office. It's you can work at home, you can work in the office, but we need to see every once in a while.
That's really interesting. So I feel, and I don't know if that has now become the norm, but as I feel, talking to the Bank of Tampa clients, the ones that have, an office presence, it's they want to see them 2 or 3 days a week. They want to get away from people taking Monday and Friday off. Yep. They want to have some time when everyone is together. And if you still have to bring everybody in, you still need a lot of space.
Yeah.
Maybe it's configured differently. Maybe it is that hoteling, you got more collaborative space. But I mean, as things are evolving, what are you seeing tenants move to?
You're 100% correct. So the challenge right now with the flexible office space and occupancy is when they do want to all come together. Most buildings don't have a conference center that can fit 200 people, in Kforce's example, or they don't have the parking. If I've leased 10,000 square feet, I'm typically going to get about 40 spaces. Well, if I'm bringing in 200 people, where are all those people going to park?
Right.
So, projects like Water Street that has public parking nearby. Midtown has a parking that can accommodate for their retail users. Tampa Heights with Armature Works. Those have been attractive to the flexible office users because they can find parking around it. Their employees can go walk to a restaurant, get a drink after work. So the walkability is important for these people who are only coming in the office occasionally.
Okay.
They want to have a reason to get there. Most C-suite says, we want to incentivize our people to come in. So let's go to a place that is attractive, that people are excited to go to. So that's why the newer developments are doing so well.
Amenity driven, and
yeah.
So is the strategy been more like, let me give you a place that you want to come to versus employers saying like you have to come into work?
100%. And some of these new projects are maybe not double, but significantly more expensive than where they're coming from. The flight to quality is the word that everybody's using, or the phrase that everybody's using right now. But it's true. If you can go from 40,000 square feet down to 15,000 square feet, or 4,000 square feet down to 2,000 square feet, and pay the same amount of money, but have more amenities, have nicer space, have the space that's designed for flexible use, then it's a win for everybody.
And I remember, I don't know, it was 5, 7, 8 years ago, we were having a conversation when SPP was bringing Water Street and pro forma, $50, $55 a square foot. And at the time, $32 maybe was the highest. And we're like, they're out of their mind. They're never going to get it. I think the pandemic actually helped them achieve their pro forma, their numbers.
The flight to quality helped them justify those rents. And, we also have the benefit of being in Tampa, Florida, where our rents are significantly less expensive than New York City, Chicago, Boston, Miami, certainly Miami right now. So these tenants can say, you know what, $55 a square foot doesn't shock me.
Right, it's a bargain, right?
It's a bargain.
No, same thing for homes. I mean, they're seeing their homes and they're like, pay cash.
Yeah.
It's a bargain.
So we're getting a lot of inbound business. I was just talking to the EDC last week, and their pipeline of companies interested in learning more about Tampa and bringing their business here is, I think, plus 40. So 40 companies investing. Now, a lot of those are shopping multiple markets, but Tampa typically gets a good look and a fair shot at it. So we need to find the space for them. That's going to be the challenge.
Yeah.
But we're getting a fair look at some very good deals coming to this market.
No, that's exciting.
Yeah.
I feel like we've got a lot of momentum, and hopefully that continues. And I certainly, you'd mentioned just in comparison to other markets. I mean, we're living a little bit of a bubble.
100%.
So speaking of current occupancy rates, and maybe actually talk about utilization rates too, because those are two different things.
Yeah. So utilization space is down 30%. Now vacancy rate and utilization rate, two different things. So you may look at a building and see the vacancies, spaces that are not leased, is about 15 to 17% right now.
Okay.
That's very high. Typically, you want to be between 8 and 10.
And that's the entire market.
That's the entire market.
So maybe we'll get into some sub-markets, but suburban
that's
office is struggling.
That's a good. Suburban's challenged. 50, I think it's 57% of all the transactions and the things that have happened in 2023 were in either in West Shore or downtown.
Okay.
So then you got to put Pinellas into another category: suburban, East Tampa, West Shore, and downtown are really driving the market.
Yeah.
But the utilization rate is about 30%. So
interesting. Only 30%.
Only 30%.
Wow. Okay.
So if you drive through go back to the parking. If you drive through an office building's parking garage, you see a lot of empty spaces.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean the building's that vacant. It just means people are working from home. But we're only just starting the fourth year after the pandemic. A lot of office leases are 5-10 years. So a lot of people have office space that they leased pre-pandemic that they may now have. They haven't readjusted their lease yet. So when those leases roll and come up for expiration, we expect them to downsize and give back space.
So I feel like you're close to it, which is why I'm asking. I feel like there is kind of that slow creep in vacancies. And of course, a lot of these leases in office are 10, 15, 20 years. So, is it safe to say that as they're coming due that, tenants are looking to take less space? And then, I am curious also just about lease terms. Are landlords willing? Because I hear a lot of our tenants, they want to kick the can because they don't know what their space needs are, right? So it's like, if I can extend for 3 years, but are landlords allowing that to happen?
As long as the landlords don't, construction prices are out of control right now for multiple different reasons. So there's no one really to blame for that. But if a landlord can lease a space that doesn't require a lot of tenant improvement dollars to get that space ready for whoever's going to lease it, they will be flexible on terms.
Okay.
Back when I started my career, you would see a lot of termination rights. I might sign a 5-year lease, but I have the right to terminate it if I give you a year's notice after the 3rd year, the 5th year. That was always the flexibility concession that we could get landlords to agree to. Mm-hmm. You don't see it anymore. Now landlords, primarily because of the lenders who are saying, we don't want a bunch of these cancellation options in our rent roll, would rather just do a 3-year lease.
Okay.
So shorter terms are available provided the landlord doesn't have to give you $50 a square foot to build it out for how you're going to use it for 3 years. Yeah,
I do want to talk about that too, the TI and how that has kind of changed over the years. But in terms of just lease fallouts, what are landlords putting in their pro forma in terms of just their renewal rate?
Oh, the renewal rates as far as
not the actual like contract rate, but just are they saying that 20 to 30% of the space is just going to go vacant?
No. I think landlords are again we're talking about Tampa.
Yeah.
So if a lot of my work is outside of Tampa, so I get to see what's happening in a lot of markets. But in Tampa, we're not doing too bad. 15% vacancy isn't great, but it's certainly not San Francisco or New York City or Boston. Landlords aren't panicked right now. So their pro forma is, we're going to hold rates the same. Rates were steadily increasing for several years, and I think last year we saw them kind of level off. Concessions are going up, so landlords they're optimistic, but I think most landlords are going to say, where we are now is probably where we're going to be in the next 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
Unless you're a midtown, unless you're a new construction, something that's, I'm talking about the older, just standard Class A buildings that are around town. Those landlords are not giving away the farm and worried that the whole thing's going to collapse. They're just saying we're steady as we go.
Stable.
Yep.
So I hear that there is the potential up to 3.2 million square feet of sublease space or shadow inventory. You hear that, and it sounds like a huge number, but when you look at the overall office space in Tampa Bay, it's like 2% of the overall inventory.
Yeah, correct.
So it doesn't seem like you got this big sleeping giant that's getting ready to like wake up. But any concern there? Is that number accurate? Where's that number come from?
Actually, I think the number in our new report is about 1 million square feet. And pre-pandemic, so just to give you a reference point, pre-pandemic, there was always sublease space on the market.
Sure.
Yeah, it's just a function of how the market works. The average was about 500 to 700,000 square feet pre-pandemic.
Okay.
Now we're at about 1 million. I think it's maybe 1.2 million.
Okay, so double.
It's not
but
horrible.
Still,
It's not horrible.
Bad. Yeah.
In 2020, 2021, it was close to 3 million, and that was panic mode. Those are slowly either the lease is expiring and then the space is going direct back to the landlord, or tenants are coming in and subletting it.
Okay.
So it's being absorbed off the market. The sublease isn't as big of a function anymore as it was 1 year, 2 years ago. And most of those are fairly large. There's not a lot of 5,000, 2,000 square foot, even 6,000, 7,000. There's some big subleases out there, and those are really impacting what is generating those numbers, those big numbers.
Okay. And is it any specific geography? Is it that suburban
Mostly
space?
East Tampa.
Okay.
East Tampa, the biggest impact of the pandemic was in call centers.
Okay.
And that work was easy to transition back to home. Those people like to work from home, and give them a computer and a phone, set them up with a phone in their spare bedroom, and they can do everything they want.
And also easy to monitor because you know who's on the phone or not.
Yeah. You don't need to, it's easy. Yeah, exactly. Easy to monitor. Not a lot of management, or, there's a little bit of, keeping up with what the employees are doing, but you can just see by the calls and who's answering them if it's being taken care of. So that impacted East Tampa significantly. The other markets weren't so call centers heavy, so they weren't as impacted by that.
Interesting. So the other thing that's impacting operators are, costs are up, insurance in particular, but all operating costs that get passed along to the tenant and CAM charges. Is that having an impact on occupancies?
No, because those are, all these landlords have to compete with their competition, and landlords are driven. It's a lot of tenants often think, this is how they are going to pass through everything to us. If they do that, landlord or tenants don't care if it's operating expense or if it's rent. They just know what they have to write a check for every month, and as long as the rent and plus operating expenses is equal to what else would be in the market, they're not so concerned about that. Now, if you get a big insurance spike because of a hurricane or something along those lines, that is passed through to the tenants, and then they get a little hiccup. But that's where I come in. My job is to get a new base year and kind of negotiate those things for the new tenant and their new term.
Okay. Yeah. So a lot of leases have that annual escalation that's based on the CPI.
Correct.
And so given the high rate of inflation, is all that being passed along? Is that, are landlords, like you mentioned, just trying to be more sensitive to that?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Landlords don't want to lose tenants, and they're not going to lose a tenant over a CPI increase or even a fixed increase. They're going to keep it as low as they can. They're motivated to do that by keeping their tenants happy. Yep. Tenants are not going to be happy if they keep getting additional bills above their rent. But anything can happen. Insurance is a big one, and
insurance is a problem here in Florida.
That is a problem, not only for homeowners insurance, but for commercial properties. Mm-hmm. So that's going to be a big adjustment that we got to figure out, and people smarter than me are going to have to do it.
Hopefully we can figure it out. Yeah. But how about rents? Do you see rents coming down at all?
No, I don't see. rents are stable, and it's rare that they go down. Landlords will start increasing concession packages.
Okay, sure.
So a lot sooner than
free
they
rent
will.
for a period of time.
Free rent, half rent, bigger tenant improvement packages, lower annual increases, anything they can do to protect the rental rate. Because when they go to a guy like you and say, "Hey, I want to take a loan to buy this building," you're going to ask them, "Well, what are you going to do different than the seller?" And almost always we're going to raise the rents, we're going to improve the building, we're going to raise the rents, and the tenants will be happy for paying a little bit more because the building's going to be nicer.
Right.
So they don't want to have to go back to their banks and say, "Oh, I told you I was going to raise the rents, or I'm going to keep them the same, but now I got to drop them." So it's easier to give them free rent, stuff that will fade off the books after a year or two of a lease term.
I recently renegotiated a lease for one of our locations, and that was looking at the market landscape, thinking that I had the ability to negotiate. And, that was like, no, we're not going to adjust your rate.
Yeah, no, rates are they're
we got other concessions to your point.
They'll do anything they can, but they don't want to have to go back to their lenders and say, or their investors. A lot of these buildings are owned by REITs, and they have to go back and tell their investors why they're doing things, and they never want to say we're dropping rents because we can't lease up the building.
Right. No, not a good place to be in.
Right.
So tenant improvements. Yeah. So I mentioned that previously. It seems like landlords didn't provide a whole lot of TI in the past. I feel like that is changed. Is that?
It's changed, but it's not enough.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Okay.
Because construction prices have gotten out of control. What used to be just new carpet and new paint was always about $5-7 a square foot. Now it's triple that.
Yeah.
And any other improvement, almost everything's tripled. Now rents haven't tripled. So when the landlord's going to give you, say, $5 a square foot per year of lease term that you agree to, a 5-year lease, you're going to get $25. That's not going to go very far. But he can't get, if his rents are only $30 a square foot, he can't give you much more than that because it ends up not making a profit. So there's a disconnect between what the construction costs are and what the landlord's willing to give, and almost no tenants want to write their own check for the difference. So
how much in this market is that an impediment to getting deals done?
If the tenant has a good broker on their side, me or anybody else,
call Bill.
And if the landlord is smart, and almost all landlords are, or they wouldn't be remain in the business, they figure it out. The impediment right now is permitting is out of control. It used to be a 6-week process to get a construction permit in Tampa. It's now, I was talking to one landlord who we both know, who is estimating now it's a year. So let's just say you have a lease expiring, and you say, I got a lease expires in 12 months. I'll talk to my landlord, or I'll hire a broker to help me out, and we'll get it done, 12 months in advance. No, you're too late. You're not going to be able to find it and relocate to a space and get it built out in time before your lease expires. And
so
landlords know that.
Is that volume driven? Like what's the bottleneck? What's the holdup? They just understaffed.
I don't want to get political, but they're making it difficult to I'll give you an example. So if you build in a large open area into a space, which is all the trend now,
yep.
Large communal areas where teams can just sit down on a couch and talk. Well, the city, the permitting office, is going to assume that you're going to fill that with as many people as you can.
Okay.
So it almost turns into an assembly area where you're saying, no, this is just a lounge that we're going to have team meetings in.
Right.
And you have to convince them that, we're not filling it up with people. This is the way office space is designed now. And it's there's a disconnect between what the permitting office agrees you're going to do and what you are going to do.
Okay. I guess the question I have there, is there any specific group? Is there, NAIOP or BOMA that's trying to work with the city to change and make things a little bit more economic friendly? We,
in fact, I had a NAIOP meeting Tuesday, and the new president out of Pittsburgh, I forget his name, just happened to be in town. He's moving his development company here. And he met with us, and that was one of the topics that he talked. Because it's not just I want to correct or clarify something. It's not just Tampa.
Sure. No.
Miami is taking. I'm doing a lease right now in Boca Raton. We're estimating 12 months to get the permit, 18 months to do all the work. It's across the board in Florida and somewhat in some of the other markets, but it's just a challenge of how quickly our town is growing. The permit office has a lot to permit.
Well, a year is not acceptable.
Yeah.
You can't plan for it. So
you got to figure it out. We got to figure it out because those 40 companies that the EDC's trying to court, they don't want to hear that they could be delayed moving in.
Sure.
Or Tampa Electric, who has 800 employees moving into a new building. They don't want to have to tell them all to have to work from home for a couple months because they're delayed in getting the building built.
No, that's why they called Bill to fix that.
Call anybody, but call somebody.
All right. Have you heard of anybody repurposing, converting property, redeveloping? I mean, I hear this stat that everyone thinks they could just look at an underutilized office building and they're like, "Oh, we'll just convert it to apartments." And as you know, with 4 plates or just getting the building vacant, even if you get down to 20%, you still got to buy out the 20%. Right. So. Incredibly hard to do, but you keep hearing it's a possibility. Are you seeing any of it happen yet?
Not in Tampa, not yet. I've heard about it in San Francisco and some Southern California. The challenge is and it's a good thing that we have it, but these office buildings are zoned for commercial office space.
Yep.
So you have to go through a rezoning, and then a lot of these office buildings don't have the parking that a multifamily complex would require. Now, on the positive side, it's what I've been told 20% cheaper to convert an office building into multifamily than it would be to tear the building down and build a brand new one. So only 20%. So
okay.
It's not a significant. It's 20% significant, but it's not like you're saving 50 cents on the dollar.
Right.
So that's why we haven't seen it yet. There hasn't been enough transition, and we haven't seen the buildings, any of these office buildings, go back to the lenders yet. Once there's some defaults, and we see some landlords giving the keys back to the bank, I think some of these banks are going to say, you know what, we'll sell it to whoever will take it. And if they want to convert it to office space or to multifamily, I think we're going to start seeing.
I think maybe some of those buildings in East Tampa are probably prime for it.
Yeah, I think it's coming. Sable Park.
Yeah,
I would be surprised if it doesn't happen soon.
And we haven't seen, at least as far as I know, landlords throwing the keys back. So we saw like BlackRock in LA and DC, I think, gave the keys back to the lender, and I'm not seeing any of that here in Tampa that I'm aware of. Are you?
No, I don't have the specifics on the numbers, but I know the Ford Credit Union building or credit department building out in Sable Park sold at a loss. So they sold at a loss rather than give the keys back. They took their lumps.
Okay.
Urban Center sold last year. I think it was the only significant office building to sell, $123 million. Starwood sold it at a loss.
Yep.
So we're not seeing people just walk away from buildings yet, but we're seeing them take their lumps and sell it. So, which is good. I'd rather see a landlord sell it than have a bunch of buildings that are in default.
Absolutely, or in foreclosure. Yeah. Sure. So I do have to ask, and hopefully I'm not putting you in an awkward spot, but WeWork.
WeWork.
I don't know if you work with any of that, maybe being tenant. I'm guessing not, but no. I really thought. So Adam Newman had some amazing ideas and very creative, inviting space. You talk about kind of that the amenity space. Kind of sexy, but just a poor business model. They never made money, and I always thought of it as kind of like the sexy Regus type property.
Exactly what it was.
Because Regis got just decimated during the Great Financial Crisis. Everybody just went home. So I thought the same was going to happen for COVID, which they didn't. Yeah. But just the lease structure they negotiated in the front end with the actual building owner. it didn't work.
They were very aggressive in signing up some leases and or executing some leases, and for a certain submarket of tenants, it's a great option. I think I saw you earlier in 2023. I was working out of Industrious in St. Pete because we were redoing our Colliers office.
Okay.
And
yeah.
I just can't work from home. One, I think
I'm not
I'd be a
fan either.
hypocrite if I worked from home because I sell office buildings and I help people.
It's a bad look, Bill.
It'd be a bad look. But so I, out of my own pocket, leased an office or two at Industrious in downtown St. Pete for me and my team. And it took me about a week to realize that it wasn't for me. And, but I did get to walk around the floors. I got to meet the other tenants there. And it's young, 1 or 2 employee offices, small, 1-person office, 1-person company, in their young 20s, early 30s. It's a great fit. I had challenges trying to manage a team when what coffee bar are they at right now? What hallway do I go down?
Who's on the ping pong table again?
Yeah, who's on the ping pong table? Who walked downstairs to go to the Starbucks? And I hear that from my clients too, who have tried it. It's good for 1 or 2 people. It's not the solution for a corporation or a company or even a law firm or anything more than a couple people.
That's really interesting because we're talking about those open floor plans, but so like the Google business model,
Yeah.
right? When they've got the Starbucks machine and they've got the beanbag chairs and ping pong. Are you seeing a reversion of getting away from that type of working environment?
I think what you're seeing, and that was the trend. And Colliers did it. My competitors all had kegs of beer in their break rooms and ping pong tables. I go into a lot of office spaces, just meeting clients, meeting tenants, meeting prospective clients. They're never being used. So it was a good idea that maybe isn't being utilized as much.
Was it a good idea though?
It was a good idea to get people to maybe come back in the office or be happy to be in the office, but they're never being used. It's almost like all these office buildings have fitness centers now, and you go in these fitness centers and these gyms. Nobody's there. Nobody's there.
Yeah.
But
nobody feels comfortable working out in front of their coworkers, right? So that's a terrible
idea.
idea
Sit
too.
in your desk all sweaty or take a shower in your office. No. But I can 100% be very confident in saying this. Every time one of my clients goes to an office building to look at a vacant space and determine if they want to move there, they always ask if it has a fitness center.
They just want to know it's there.
It seems like you got to check that box, but that box will never be used. So I don't know. It's one of those things.
Tell me about Deal of the Year. So Tico and People's Gas, huge lease. So tell us about it.
It was a project, and
it started before the pandemic.
Oh yeah,
negotiations?
yeah. We started in 2000. I was doing a lot of Tampa Electric is transitioning to clean energy, solar farms, and I had been helping them acquire. I think we did about 10,000 acres total over about a year and a half. And really got to know the team and the people at Tico very well. And the general counsel, the attorney friend of mine that worked there said, Bill, I'm being in charge of the headquarters. We got to figure out what we're going to do. The lease is coming up for expiration in 2025. And this was 2017, 8 years. And so, it's going to take some time. We're not early, but we're not late. And once we started kind of uncovering we spent a good year and a half just figuring out before we even went to the market to look at options, what they need. Mm-hmm. The whole market. This was pre-pandemic. What do you need? Why do you need it? This is
probably pre-Midtown too, right? It was just a
Midtown was there were
they marketing
cranes going around,
okay.
but nothing was open for sure. Water Street was just being developed. Had no tenants in their office buildings yet. I don't believe the USF Medical School had signed their lease yet. But a company that big and a utility like that, they don't move fast. They have to make a lot of decisions, and they're very methodical. They're all engineers. They're very methodical about how they do things and why they do things. And it took us a good year and a half to kind of just figure out what are you going to need in. It sounds crazy to say it. A lot of our questions were, what do we need in 2020 and 2050, or what is Tampa going to be like in 30 years? Because whatever we do
as a utility, I mean, you have to have that level of planning. I mean, for you and I mean, I don't know what I'm doing next week. Right?
Oh yeah, exactly. Everything was what is this going to be like in 25, 30 years? And you may not remember this, but right around the time we got started, Texas had a freeze, and their electric grid was completely shut down.
Yes.
And so TECO's parent company is based in Canada, in Nova Scotia. And they said, TECO, you guys are in a flood zone. You're surrounded by Hillsborough River, the Bay. If there's a major hurricane, one, you got to get the power grid back up. And two, you're not going to be able to get to your office because it's going to be underwater. Mm-hmm. So that was a driving thing. Is
get out of downtown.
We got to get out of downtown. Parking was a big issue downtown. They didn't have enough parking, and they wanted to own a building, and they lease where they are currently. So we had our checklist. We knew what we were looking for, and then we had to kind of determine who can do it. Tampa Heights was a choice. There were people involved in TECO that had connections at Water Street, but we also looked out. I don't know if you know the site. Where Coca-Cola is building at 301 in the Crosstown.
Yep.
We looked at that site.
Okay.
We looked all over. Mosaic has their office building out in Lithia, Florida. And we said, well, maybe we should go out in the suburbs. There was all kinds of different things that we had to uncover, investigate, and then either say this is one that we're going to shortlist or we eliminate it. And that took about 3 years.
Yeah, a lot of patience,
a lot of
persistence,
a lot of analysis, a lot of questions, a lot of things.
Like you said, engineers.
It was, but so reasonable. The nice thing about a utility and the people that work for the utility is they get it. They know how they build power plants. An office building's is nothing to them. They're used to working with some big projects, and this one was big, but it was certainly not as complex as a power plant. So there was nothing unreasonable about what they asked us to do. We just had to do it. And then the pandemic came, and we had to figure out how do we keep this project rolling, because the expiration date is a fixed date.
Now, did it almost go off the rails because of the pandemic?
A lot more questions about, well, what if we just renewed? What would that look like? Or should we maybe offer the landlord, a purchase on the building that we're in so that we don't have to go through that? And then, we
doesn't check all the other boxes.
Doesn't check all the boxes, but at that time, who knew what the world was going to be? So we had to answer the questions, and then we had to study. Okay, if we stay here, how much money do we have to put in this building to make it work until 2050. 2050 was always our year that we always kind of referenced. What would we have to do this building if we wanted to stay, if we were here in the next 25 years? We just kept chipping away at it. And I can tell you the folks at Midtown where they ended up were by far just they helped answer the questions. They knew how to deal with engineers, and they knew how to answer the questions to get them comfortable that this was the right place to be. And now you see the building going up, and it'll be the tallest building in West Shore, tallest building outside of downtown. It's going to be a statement. I mean, it's a big statement now.
It's going to be a billboard.
And it's only half built.
Yeah, it's going to be a billboard. Well, you definitely pick they pick the sexier option versus Lithia.
Well, yeah,
or 301.
Yeah. But the thing we always joke about is that if you know the site that they're building the building, and if you know the Midtown project, half of that, or one side of that building, is facing an electrical substation.
Yes, yeah.
And it's the only tenant in town who would be willing to look at that all day.
It is theirs.
Is an electric company.
It is theirs.
So we got a little discount on the land because we're going to look at a substation, which our guys like to look at. So
the site inspection right there every day. Right. Make sure it's working. Bill, if people want to find you, where can they find you at?
My name, bill.reeves at colliers.com. Best way to reach me. Our colliers.com is our website, and I think I'm the first one on the page.
You're out there, man. You're searchable.
I'm easy to find.
Dealmaker of the year. So, Bill, thanks for coming on Money Market. I appreciate
you inviting me. Thank you. It's good to see you.
So if you have any questions or a future show idea or would like to be a sponsor, you can send us a message at moneymarket@bankoftampa.com or find us on LinkedIn, X, Facebook, and on Instagram at Bank of Tampa and online at bankoftampa.com. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for subscribing. Share and tell a friend. And until next time, adios.